This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by productivity authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience. I am so super pumped about today's show. We have the amazing Allan Kleynhans. I hope I've said that correctly, by the way. But anyway, who is Allan? For the people that don't know him, he is he's actually a Tony Robbins elite trainer. Or was an elite trainer. I'm sure that you are still an elite trainer. Allan's also been on the stage for the last 20 years in the areas of entrepreneurship, self-leadership, self-mastery and awareness, communication and leadership, which I absolutely love. He's also been on the stages and been an honorary member of the Yes Group, with our good friend Cole Pearson, I believe. And I mean, it's a real privilege. We've also got, we also, because we have so many different friends as well, JP being one of us, who's a good friend of ours. And Allan is originally from South Africa and also set up the Speaker Association back over in South Africa as well. He's one of the founding members for that as well. So Allan, just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
I'm super pumped about today. I know it's going to be a great show. I can already feel, we were talking about this offline, right? Mm. And when you meet someone and you think, wow, I can already feel that energy, right? It's that. Do you ever get that when you meet someone?
Yeah, for sure. Energy is infectious, and I talk a lot about energy. Energy is such an important thing, a part of life, right?
Absolutely, 100%. So, I've got so many questions to ask you. It's ridiculous. So we'll see. We're going to have some fun on today's show, guys. And more importantly, take notes. If you're listening to this in the gym or if you're out in transit or whatever it is, take notes because honestly, some of the things that myself and Allan are going to be talking about, we're going to blow you away. So I'm super excited about that. But I want to go back, if I may, Allan, because I know that you were in the military back in the 80s and that kind of stuff. And you've been in the area of entrepreneurship from, I guess, the early 90s, I suppose, in a way, right? And then you read Think and Grow Rich, right? Which is a fantastic book by Napoleon Hill. And for you, what was the reason? What were your big takeaways from that book? And what was the conscious decision once you read that book? What were the decisions that you thought, you know what, I've read this book, this is what I'm going to do next?
Well, the first thing that struck me about that book was that when I read the line, every adversity has within it the seed of an equivalent of greater benefit. The first time I read that line, my brain said, that's BS. There was like my brain balked at that line and said, well, I've just come out of the military. I've just been in Angola for 7 months, taking part in the bloodiest war in Africa, as it was known. And, how can that have any kind of benefit or any kind of, how can there be any seed of any benefit within that kind of experience? But I remembered what my friend had said to me when he gave me the book. He said, listen, read this book as if the author is talking to you across a coffee table. Pay attention because this book holds, so much value and so much gold. And in fact, the book had the cover of the book at that time in 1988, the cover was a pile of gold bullion and, just these gold bricks stacked on top of each other. And I remember being impressed by the cover. And so I wrote that sentence down and I put it on the wall and I contemplated that sentence over and over and over. And the second thing that struck me about the book is the secret that Napoleon Hill talks about, the secret that the book holds, that whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And I really took that away. And I thought, wow, whatever I really focus on and whatever I believe is possible for me, then he's telling me that that's achievable, And very soon after that, I got my first job and then I started making some really good money and I got into sales and I became a reader, and that was the book that started everything for me. It just, it was also another thing that I took away from that book that I talk about a lot is he talks about specific and organized knowledge and that, You need specific and organized knowledge. You can't rely on general knowledge. Knowledge from college or school or university is general knowledge. It's theory. It's old. It's dated. It's theoretical books that have been written so long ago. Textbooks that have been written ages ago. And he said you need specific and organized knowledge, and you need to apply it in a specific and organized way. And I remember those were the three things that I enjoyed about that book specifically.
It's interesting. I actually interviewed recently Sharon Lecter, who you will know anyway.
I know Sharon, yeah.
And she's a great person. And we were talking about how the education system, around the world is just kind of so outdated, and why our children don't get taught about, we all get taught. Well, certainly I was, and maybe you were. Is that our parents taught us how to get good grades, go to university, and get a good job, right? That was the mindset, right?
Yes.
But in today's world, for me, I'm encouraging my kids to go to school, get good grades, go open a good business, right?
Yeah.
And be an entrepreneur and do what you love and do what you're passionate. And if entrepreneurship is not for you, then that's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that I don't know about your thoughts on that, but I don't know why schools, colleges, and universities still to update this system, right? This system, because it creates this mindset for a lot of people, and people feel that there's not many options or choices out there. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's plenty of options and choices out there. The opportunities are endless. Opportunities are everywhere, but it really depends on are we willing to be open to them? Are we willing to believe that, first of all, because it is about belief essentially. And, we must remember that we're creative by nature. And so we've got to encourage children to be creative. Unfortunately, the system it discourages creativity. We teach children to answer questions. We don't teach them to ask questions, children who ask questions are often told to keep quiet. Which is a real shame. So it's important for parents to encourage their children to be creative. I encourage my children to read outside of the schooling curriculum. They read books outside of the curriculum. I encourage them to read books on psychology, read books on personal performance, on success, on, creativity, etc., to spark their own creativity, because we've got to be doing that for children. But yeah, the opportunities are endless. We live in a very, very, in a world that's, just unbelievable the way we live. Think about the kinds of freedoms that we enjoy, the kinds of abundance that we enjoy, the kinds of wealth that is available, and it's available to everyone. But you have to be creative, and you have to tap into your own self, and you've got to be. There's so many things there's so many variables about that. We could talk about that forever, you and I.
It's a whole can of worms, and I love talking about it, and kind of, especially because we've both got kids anyway, and things like that, so we kind of share the same sentiment. I know that your area of expertise is all around self-mastery and self-leadership, right? That's kind of your realm, if you like. But where did you mentioned about Think and Grow Rich. How did you make the transition from reading that book into becoming an expert of that? Where did the interest spark for you on that?
Well, it started with that book, and then I just became an avid reader. And actually the first three books that I ever read, I remember the first three, and then after there was just a whole bunch of them. But I read Mind Power by John Keogh after Think and Grow Rich, and in subsequent years, John has become a friend of mine, and he's done a lot of work in South Africa over the years. Mm-hmm. And then the third book I read was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and then I started reading Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Jim Rohn, Dennis Waitley, Brian Tracy I was a big fan, and Bob, the guy, the initial sales guy, Tom Hopkins. I was a big fan of Tom Hopkins because I got into sales, and then I arrived in London. The first book I bought was Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. When I arrived in London in 1990, that was my first introduction to NLP, and I was fascinated by that. And then I studied NLP. And then I became this reader. And initially, my motivation was the fact that I was a kid that grew up with very, very low self-esteem. I grew up in a very tough neighborhood. I grew up next to a police station for the first 6 years of my life in racist South Africa. I was born in 66. And so from 66 through to 72, living next door to Point Road Police Station in probably the toughest neighborhood in Durban at that time. And, there was a very, very harsh education on the brutality of the racism in South Africa. I used to see things in the police yard next door that really, shocked me. And I didn't tell anyone about it because I thought I'd get into trouble. But they affected me, they made me feel very unsafe. And then throughout my schooling career, I went to 2 private schools, all boys, all white, very hierarchical, a lot of initiation, a lot of fighting, a lot of bullying, a lot of teasing, that kind of thing went through. I was the recipient of a lot of that. And so to shape my identity, it shaped my self-esteem was very low. And then obviously I went into the military and I had a very, very heavy experience in Angola where I was at war for 7 months, had to do some terrible things. I was an RPG-7 rocket holder and a patrol mortarist. So I was dropping 60 millimeter mortars in close combat and using RPG-7 rockets, to take out enemy vehicles. And so that shaped my identity too. That also shaped my psychology in a big way. Came out of that with post-traumatic stress. So, and I suffered with that for about 9 years. And I became a drinker. I was taking drugs every day. I was numbing myself. I was locking myself away in my bedroom. I didn't trust myself around people. So when I came across Think and Grow Rich, which was referred to me and recommended to me by a friend of mine who was in the same operation as me in Angola, and he was very smart at 21 years of age. I mean, one of the most emotionally mature people I've ever met. And in subsequent years, he was killed in a car accident. So Malcolm was my earth angel and now is one of my angels. But he was the one who actually told me to read Think and Grow Rich, and he told me to be a reader and told me to take this information and use it to understand what Angola had done to my psychology and how it was affecting me. So initially my motivation for studying was, how can I fix myself? As soon as I began to study psychology and began to understand it, I began to see that I had the 4 most limiting paradigms that we can hold as human beings. I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I don't fit in, and it's not available to me. And, these 4 paradigms, I had all 4 of them. And so the more I studied, the more my motivation was like, how can I understand myself and how can I really understand how I can get past my own suffering? How can I put my own, my own limiting paradigms to bed so that I could actually find some happiness, and I could actually find some confidence in myself so that I could actually find a decent level of living, in myself. I had no ideas about what I wanted to do in the future, to be honest. I had 0 ideas. But it wasn't until 1994, actually, when I was in London and I went to the Landmark Forum. And I did the forum here in London with a guy called David Ure, an Australian facilitator. And he was Landmark's most successful facilitator for years and years and years. And within a few minutes of him being on the stage, there was 350 people in the room. I didn't even know I was there. I just enrolled the program because I was hanging out with a girl at the time who was in the program. And she said, you should do this program with me. I said, I'm cool, I'm coming. And I find myself in this room. And it's like one of the first, it was probably the first personal development workshop I'd done. Every other workshop before that was all about sales. It was just sales workshops, right? And I was becoming a very good salesperson. However, I was good at selling, but inside I felt like, it was a mask, And when I sat in the Landmark Forum and we went to work on what was happening inside of us and how we were showing up in relationships, especially the relationship with our parents, the penny dropped for me. And I just thought, wow, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to find out, how do you facilitate transformation in people where you help them with their relationships? Because I recognized first and foremost that I had no relationship with my parents, that I had a very, very tempestuous relationship with my father. And that really affected me as a young boy, because my father was very popular, very gregarious. Everybody knew him in Durban. And I felt very intimidated by that. It was very big shoes to fill. And we didn't have a relationship. At 26 years of age, I walked out of that workshop, picked up the phone in the middle of that workshop on a Saturday afternoon and phoned my father and said, Dad, we need to have a conversation. And we had a 90-minute conversation. And I just told him exactly, what I thought about him, the beliefs I'd been carrying about our relationship, the beliefs I had about my father as a young boy, what I believed that he thought about me. And, I just opened up to him and we healed that relationship in that conversation and we became best friends on that phone call. We actually fell in love with each other for the first time. And that was a really healing process for me, actually. And then I just thought, wow, this is what I want to learn about. I want to learn about, I want to learn about human beings. I want to learn about how people transform and transition in their own lives. And then it wasn't until 96 that I actually got the idea that I wanted to become a speaker. And then it took me 4 years to get on a stage just to develop the courage. And then I got on a stage here in London at the London Yes Group. Shortly after I became a member there in 1999. And I was offered an opportunity to speak in 2000 at the King's College in front of 600 members. It was an extremely terrifying experience. I was terrified. Terrified partly because of the fact that I held this belief about the fact that I could never stand on a stage, because when I was at boarding school, I was forced to stand on a stage in front of the whole school and give an impromptu talk, which I completely destroyed and completely hashed. And so many years later, standing on the stage in King's College in front of 600 people, my legs shaking like reeds in the wind, my hands sweating. I was like, I often refer to it as I was spaghetti. It was like spaghetti bolognese on the audience. There was no structure. There was zero. But the feedback I got afterwards was the passion and intensity was through the roof. Yeah. And if I could get some structure, then there was a good chance that I could become a good speaker. This is the feedback I had from Peter Sage actually at the time, and I'm sure you know Peter Sage.
Yes.
And Carl Pearsall, the founder of the Yes Group.
Yes.
And so in 2001, I went back to South Africa after studying, having all these studies, and I had this intention to go and make a difference in South Africa. And I thought, if I'm gonna start my career as a coach or a speaker, facilitator, why not start in South Africa where I grew up, right? And come back there with all this stuff that I'd learned about myself, all this knowledge I'd picked up around psychology and around, understanding post-traumatic stress, understanding trauma, understanding, performance psychology. And it was the best thing I ever did, because I launched a fantastic career. I worked with the Natal Sharks rugby team. I worked with some of the Springbok rugby players. I worked with the South African netball team. I worked with a world champion pole vaulter. I worked with the police, the military, and that's where I became, one of the founders of the South African it was at that time the National Speaking Association of South Africa, which then became the Professional Speaking Association of South Africa, and then we were included into and incorporated into the Global Federation of Professional Speakers. And that organization is grown every year now. Now there's thousands of members, and it's brilliant. They're doing wonderful work out there, supporting fledgling speakers, fledgling coaches, and providing workshops for speakers and obviously coaches. And yeah, it was awesome. 7 years I had out there, and we came back to England in 2008, and then I took my career international. So that is a long answer to your question. It was, I didn't know. And I was talking about this the other day, Adam. I did not know all those years ago when I picked up Think and Grow Rich at 21 years of age, 7 months out of the military, conflicted, angry, volatile, drunk all the time, high all the time. I didn't know that I would be doing the work I'm doing now, which is helping people to heal deep trauma, and I love the work I do. And I specialize in spiritual psychology and self-mastery. And my favorite subject is consciousness, And so, you and I have got a lot in common. It's about, we love helping people to grow, whether it's in business or in life. And the two are linked. We need to be, you can't get away, you can't get away from the two are married, business and life. Nowadays, we look at us now where we all running our businesses from home, right? Because we can't go out and work. Now, when I say all of us, obviously not all of us, but there's a vast majority of people who are now working from home. The entrepreneurs, the idea of the entrepreneur has exploded. Entrepreneurship has been growing for many years, but now I really think that people are starting to look at it as a brand new opportunity because they've been forced to do so. They've lost their jobs, lost their businesses. Now they're thinking, what can I do from home? And people have become very creative. I don't know. I'm sure you've noticed, right? All this stuff online, people finding out that they can paint, people finding out they can write, people finding out they can play piano, or they can get into music. There's so many things now. It's a wonderful time for us, man.
Definitely. And I absolutely agree with you on that 100%. And it's interesting. So I picked up some really interesting points from your speech there, because my uncle was actually in the military. And I don't know if it's the same in South Africa and stuff, but did you ever feel abandoned by your country or by the army? And then it's kind of like, oh, well, you finish the army, now off you go type of thing. And then I see just so many military personnel, and I'm sure there's a few people listening in where they have this abandonment issue. They don't know what to do with themselves, right? And then suddenly you'll get a small minority of people like yourself that has read a great book and then they move on to great things. But then there's so many people that are still gone the opposite way, right? Which is really sad, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. I when I at my last final parade, when I was given my medals, etc., and I shook General Magnus Malan's hand, and I remember he said, "Thank you for your service, young man, and have a great life." And I was happy to be out of the military. I was only too pleased to be going home for the final time. I was also given my particular intake, my particular battalion, because we had been in Angola for 7 months. We were given relief from camps, so we never had to go back to another camp. But camps was a permanent fixture of the military. Once you had done the military, you had to go back to regular camps. I wasn't. I was given a freebie from that. I was so happy about that. But yes, we did. I did think at the time that we had very little support, considering we had just come out of Angola and we were largely traumatized by that experience. What we had done and seen, things that people should never have to do and see, ever in their lifetime. We like, a lot of men like watching war movies. War movies are very popular because, they, for a number of different reasons. I think directors like to demonstrate the atrocity of war, as well as the effect of war on the human psychology and on relationships. And yes, it does definitely do that. And I think a lot of military people do feel abandoned by their countries because of the fact that there's very little support and very little help. And the support and help that is available is it's lacking in so many ways,
I agree. Absolutely agree. But anyway, I want to move on to something else, because there was something that you said within your talk just a second ago, right? And one of them, and you will all be, because you're an expert in terms of self-awareness, and a lot of our listeners are business owners and entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the big things that I see right now are people that live with big egos, and they live in this fantasy land. I don't get it, right? I don't understand where these egos and fantasy, living in this big fantasy land. And you mentioned about people wearing this fake mask.
Yeah.
Why is it that people choose to live a life like that? Where does it come from? And, what do they need to do to kind of, I suppose, shift, from that state, because it is a state of mind more than anything else, to the new state of mind?
It goes all the way back to our youth, because of the fact that we misalign from our truth as soon as we're born. We encouraged to follow certain rules. We encouraged to follow certain thinking patterns. We get put into certain boxes. Children are not encouraged to be creative. There's a lot of people, business. I love business. I love entrepreneurship. I work with a lot of business people. I work with a lot of professional people, and I've met a lot of people who are very, very successful, and yet they're still very unhappy. They still cannot find the ability to smell the roses as they go through the journey of life. And it's such an important thing to do, is to be able to enjoy the process, not just be fixated on the goal. There's so many of us that are fixated on the outcome because we believe we don't realize that unconsciously we've been indoctrinated into this belief system that when we get somewhere, we're going to be happy. And when we achieve something, we'll be happy. And that's what we teach our kids since they're born. You got to be first, you got to be on the top of the podium, you got to win, you got to get A's, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to get a good degree, you got to get the best job, you got to make the most money, you got to be the best. And so that unconsciously, unfortunately, then indoctrinates into thinking that when we get there, whatever the best resonates or whatever is associated to that term, that we're going to feel happy. And so we don't teach people to be happy on the way. And because of the way we've encouraged, or the system that we have set up, the economy that we have, the way the economy is set up, the way the world is set up, the way we interact with people, each other, internationally, our civilization, let's say, the way we've set up our civilization, it doesn't encourage people being authentic. And this is the biggest problem that we have in the world today. We do not encourage people being authentic. We encourage people, if you just look at social media is about encouraging people to, if you just look at what people put on social media, and in terms of putting our best self forward, and putting images on social media that we look good. Social media quite frankly, one of the biggest challenges I see about social media is it's full of people putting themselves online with hardly any clothes on. Men and women, right? Men flexing their muscles, women, bearing their all, right? And again, it's like, and what it says. And I remember my father told me this as a young boy, right? He always told me, be careful about. He said, you never want to portray yourself as something you're not. He always told me to judge people by their character. And he said, character is very important, manners, courtesies, small things like that, And the first book my father gave me to read, actually, at the age of 16, which I never read until I was in my 20s, was How to Win Friends and Influence People. And Dale Carnegie, such a powerful book, still to this day, such a powerful book. I was just telling my son the other day, I said, man, you got to read that book. It's brilliant. And, this whole thing about being unauthentic, and the way the civilization is set up, the way we encourage our kids to be, so we all these people are growing up with these masks of these identities. And also, one of the biggest contributors, if you look at children, and you've got 2 young children right now, and is the effect of our own behavior around them and what it does to their consciousness, their belief system, their self-esteem, their ideas of who they are. We have to be so careful now. More and more people are becoming aware of the fact of how we raise children, conscious parenting, but still there's so much unconscious parenting going on because people are just doing the best they can. They're trying to survive. And unfortunately, there's so many broken homes. I was listening to a conversation the other day on Black Lives Matter, and I was listening to some of these black leaders, and they were talking about one of the biggest challenges in the communities, especially in America, is young black men growing up without fathers, growing up without father figures, and what an impact that has on a young boy, and what a negative impact it has, And so, there's so many challenges that cause us to be inauthentic, and therefore then we also are misaligned from our truth. I firmly believe that we need to really find out who we are deeply inside of ourselves, who we are, what makes us tick, what makes our own soul come alive. Because we are mind and soul. We are mind, body, and soul. We are not just the mind. We are not just about achieving. We are about being. And so we have to learn how to be happy on the way to whatever we are looking to achieve. And that's one of the biggest challenges for us as human beings.
I completely agree. It's interesting. When you were talking about belief systems and around, I suppose, people's perceptions around judgments. And for me, I don't know about you, but if people see me on social media or whatever it is, I really don't give a shit, what people think about me at the end of the day, right? That's just how I work. That's how I operate. But then I know other people out there that really do care about the way they look, the way they feel, and the way they show up, right? I mean, I'd love for you to give some tips about people who, especially society today in the entrepreneurial world, especially in business and that kind of stuff. You have any tips or advice about, about being a fake, right? Being a fake and living not living authentically more than anything else.
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's not that people intend to be fake. No. But what it is, but we also have this phrase about fake it till you make it, and I just hate that phrase, a long time ago, I started using faith it till you make it. I tell people, hey, don't say fake it till you make it. Say faith it till you make it, because you have to have a certain amount of faith until you get there. And faith is important because you've got to, if you've got an idea to start a business, you've got no references for if it works out. If you've never done anything like that before, you've got zero confidence. You've got zero belief in yourself. All you have is the idea that it can work because other people have done it before, or other people are doing it. And you've read stories about how other people have made it happen. So you think, okay, well, maybe I can do the same thing. So you need a lot of faith. But if you're encouraging people to fake it, or if you're telling your children, hey, listen, you need to fake it till you make it, that's not the right way to do it. So this whole thing about what people are really afraid of, Adam, is they're really afraid to let people see them. They're really afraid to let people see who they are, because they are so worried about the fact that if people see who they really are, they might leave. This whole thing about not being loved, of losing love or being unlovable, it's so deep in people. This whole thing about not being worthy, it's so deep in people. This is what drives a lot of very successful people. This lack of worth, this lack of self-worth. And they don't even realize it. But what they've done is they've turned that lack of self-worth, that fear, into a tremendous drive. And that drive is awesome. However, it becomes unhealthy after a period of time if you're not looking after yourself at a deep level, if you're not really finding out what is this incessant need to keep filling this void, right?
Yeah.
This internal void, because that's what creates illness. That's what drives people to cancer. You know, if you take someone like a perfect example, Steve Jobs. You know, Steve Jobs, $15 billion in personal assets. You know, a company was worth $70 billion when he died. You know, but he died. And how did he die? His body ate him from the inside. His own body ate him alive, right? That's called cancer. Why would your own body turn on you? Because something is tremendously out of sync. You know, if your own body eats you with a body, then the human body, and I've studied on all kinds of disciplines of nutrition and, you know, neurology and physiology. And, you know, you have to look at, you know, we are mind, body, and spirit. You know, we are also achievers, but we also need to learn how to take care of what's inside. And if we're not taking care of what's inside is going to turn on itself. And that's exactly what disease is. Disease is yourself turning on itself. And so why does that happen? Something must be out of sync. And that's the relationship that we have with ourselves. So a lot of driven people are driven by this need to fill this internal void that they don't even know is available. They don't even know is there. They just know that, you know, I just can't quite put my finger. I work with a lot of successful business people. They say, you know, I'm happy. I've got a great business. I've got a great wife, great husband, great kids, live in a nice house, drive a nice car, a lot of great friends, great social life. But, you know, I just can't quite put my finger on it. But, you know, something, you know, I wake up early in the morning, you know, 4:30 in the morning, and my mind is racing, you know, and I think, okay, cool, I better get up and do some work, right? But that getting up and doing some work, you know, it's still not feeding that. There's something there. And people say, what is that? That's the call of your soul, man. That's the call of your soul. Your soul's calling to you. It's saying, hey, listen, you need to give some attention to me inside here. And that drives people to be, you know, that's this whole thing about being afraid of people letting them see them. So they're being driven to be something that they're not. When we're kids, we have these experiences, these traumatic experiences that shape our psychology, that shape our self-esteem, they shape our identity. And then we form an identity because we believe by being a certain way, it's going to meet our needs. And then we end up living into this false identity, supported by these false beliefs that we're not enough. And then we learn about how to be achievers and how to be the best, etc. And that we got to do well. We got to do well. We got to compete. We got to keep up with the Joneses. And then that's how people fall into these false identities. You know, and they don't even realize it. You know, and then all they know is that they're not really happy. Yeah, they're not really happy.
It's interesting because when you say, because I use that word, keeping up with the Joneses, quite a lot. And from my perspective, I don't know about you, but especially people in the business and entrepreneurial world right now, okay? Yeah. And people, especially in society, not the entrepreneurial society, especially, right? I see it all the time. I have conversations with people. And, you know, with social media going on, it's the whole kind of comparing people to where they're at in terms of their life. You know, just because you might see someone successful on social media doesn't necessarily mean they live a successful life, right? Would you agree?
Absolutely, 100%. What people put online is definitely not what's really going on. and you and I both know that because we've both met people. You know, I mean, I know people. You know, I know people, and I know them online. I know them offline, and you know, we all doing the best we can. You know, this is not to take pot shots at anybody. You know, listen, people. One of my firm beliefs. You know, one of the foundation, one of the underlying premises of NLP is that everyone's got their own map of the world and everyone's doing the best they can with the resources they have. And so we're all doing the best we can. But what we need to remember is that everybody's driven by the same fears. Everybody's driven by this fear of not being enough. You know, I've got to make sure that I'm enough because my neighbors are doing well and they've just bought themselves a Jaguar, or they've just bought themselves, you know, a Maserati, or they've just bought themselves, you know, a new Ferrari, or the neighbors have just bought themselves a nice 4x4. You know, I need to upgrade my car, right? Because I'm living in the same street. We basically living on top of each other, especially in big cities like London. And we see what's happening with other people online, offline, and that stirs our own fears. It triggers our own fears that we're not doing well enough. And then, you know, really, what is well enough? what's interesting, Adam, I'm sure you've seen, what's interesting about this whole COVID-19 now for all of us. And I've been, coaching my clients through this whole process, some very successful people in America, people with offices in multiple countries in Dubai, etc. And right at the beginning of lockdown, I gave them 4 questions. I said, listen, okay, what are you going to focus on? What are you going to make it mean? What are you going to do? Who are you going to be? That's all you need to focus on, those 4 questions this whole time. And then that's going to help you to transition your business. And a lot of them were able to do it very successfully. However, what this whole time has taught us, it's actually been a forced pause. It's been a forced pause. And listen, there's positives and negatives that have come out of this. There's some massive negatives, like huge negatives. And we'll see that we're going to still see the repercussions of those negatives going forward. We're going to see the repercussions of those negatives in terms of the loss of employment, the rises in suicide, the rises in depression and anxiety and domestic violence, in child abuse, in all kinds of things, right? We're going to see that in drug abuse, in drinking, in everything. However, there's been some massive positives. And what people have been forced to do is they've been forced to pause and reflect on what's important. They've been forced to realize, actually, you know what? I don't need all that stuff. I don't need all that stuff. You know what I mean? All I need is my neighbors. All I need is my sister, my husband, my children. All I need is my family. All I need is this connection, this human connection. I don't need all this stuff. And I've been speaking to a lot of people who've made that realization that actually, you know what? There's so much stuff they have that actually they didn't even use it while they were in lockdown. All they were interested in was, I need someone to talk to. I need someone to hug. I need someone to, to hang out with. I need somebody. How can I help my neighbors? I'm going to help those people over there. They need help, and communities have tightened up, compassion, kindness has gone up, which has been wonderful, Wonderful.
Absolutely. It's interesting, right? So I remember having a conversation a couple of years ago, Allan, right? And I met someone really super successful. He was Russian. And by the way, he wasn't doing anything dodgy. I just wanted to kind of say that, right? Let me support you with that. I love Russia. I've got lots of clients in Russia. I've got lots of followers in Russia. I've got a big following in Russia. I've been going to Russia for years. I lived in Moscow in 1998, actually. It's a wonderful place full of wonderful people. So all the stories about corruption, right? This doesn't apply to this story, okay? But listen, I met someone a couple of years ago and we had this conversation and built up his business. He was actually a multi-millionaire. And I'm sure that you've heard of the story of, you've met someone who's super successful. They've got all of this stuff, right? They've got the big mansion, the big lovely houses and that kind of stuff. They were married, lovely wife, couple of kids. And then it all fell apart. It all fell apart for him. And then suddenly he has no wife. He has no kids. He has a big empty mansion with all these different rooms with stuff in it and himself to talk to. Yeah. And it's sad.
Yeah.
Right. I've just found it really sad. And I think to myself, I don't know about you, Allan, but I think to myself, I don't want to, why would I want to live like a life like that? That just doesn't leave happiness.
No, not at all, man. Not at all.
Which is crazy.
You're so right. I've got a friend of mine who was able to transition his whole business online. And what he's done is he's terminated some leases on some of the properties that he held because where he had lots and lots of staff. And obviously it's been challenging because of the fact that, staff has been laid off. However, he's been able to downsize in a lot of ways, and it's just give him a lot more freedom, Definitely. So yeah, we don't need all that stuff, No. We think we do, and we buy into the belief we need that stuff. And then we've got this whole social media aspect of people portraying stuff, you need this stuff, you need this stuff. Then we've got the advertising industry, the marketing industry. Buy this stuff and you'll feel better. Buy this stuff and you'll feel better. Drive this car and you can get that girl. It's
instant gratification drives me insane, man.
Instant gratification is it's a cancer, man. It's a cancer.
It's so funny. Actually, do you know what? There's I've been doing some market research over the last sort of 2 or 3 months, right? And especially with people going through challenging times right now, Allan, okay? And there's one thing that is really interesting right now, okay? Which is all around imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And, because a lot of the businesses that we are working with and continue to work with in need of support, they went from thriving business to survival mode, like literally in less than a week. And probably same for you and helping and supporting your clients.
Yeah.
But in terms of imposter syndrome, how has it been created for a lot of people? And why is it that so many people feel that they're a fraud, or this insecurity starts to come in? And, even when we're going through challenging times like this, any tips or advice for people that are suffering from imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I suffered with that for a while, a long time, actually. Actually got a very interesting story about that because, and it's a story I tell from the stage often, and it's, I got to South Africa and I opened the blind and now suddenly the sun is streaming through that.
Now you've got this white face, by the way.
Not bad.
Well, at least you can get some vitamin D anyway, so that's all good.
I got to South Africa in November 2001 with the intention of starting my coaching business there and my speaking business there, because where I grew up, and I knew that South Africa was going through a massive transition. Mandela had, recently, only a few years before that, become the president, and several years before that, and there was loads of transition happening there. And also, I knew that there would probably be a need for what I had to offer out there in terms of NLP and coaching, and when I got there, it was a fantastic opportunity because there was very little of it going on, and it was still in its very, very early stages, and I was able to have a great impact there. However, the point I'm making is that I became very successful very quickly, and I started making a lot of money very quickly, more money than I ever dreamed possible. I used to dream about being a millionaire, and I used to say to myself, right, when I read Think and Grow Rich, Adam, at 21, I said, right, I'm going to be a millionaire at 25. I'm going to be a millionaire at 30. I'm going to be a millionaire at 35, because I had to keep moving the goalposts, right, because I didn't get there. And then I said, right, at 40. And then at 40, I was a South African millionaire, and I was living in a beautiful house that was worth millions, overlooking the sea, 180-degree sea view, golf course in the distance. There was a river that ran, the Umgeni River, that ran down into the sea. That was my beautiful vista every morning when I came out onto my deck. Beautiful rolling garden, swimming pool, double car garage, beautiful cars, beautiful clients. Working with rugby players, best rugby players in the world, and all the top banks, all the top brands in South Africa. Big companies, Investec, Barclays, Standard Bank, and I wasn't happy, man. And suddenly I had this feeling, oh my God, do I deserve this success? And I had this, it was my first very real, tangible experience of imposter syndrome. And I remember thinking to myself, when I was standing in front of, 30 of the best rugby players in the world, and teaching them, performance psychology, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, like, here I am, just this guy who's like, I got a matric at school. I read a few books, went to a few courses, and I'm getting paid all this money. I mean, like, and I remember thinking, shit, what happens if they knew that I didn't really know, do I qualify? Am I worthy? Do I qualify to be in front of these champions? These world champions. Yeah, 8 Springboks in the rugby team at that time, in the Natal Sharks. They're one of the best rugby teams in the world to this day still. And I helped them to go from the bottom of the log to second in the log the following season. And I was very proud of that. It was great for my career. I was in the paper, but I still do remember thinking, oh my God, I used to run out of my house every morning. I wake up in the morning, go out my house, downstairs. I had my office under the house, walk into my office and log onto my computer and log onto my bank account just to see if the money was still there. I actually couldn't believe it, every day. And I had this feeling. I thought, wow, I've got this imposter syndrome. I'm feeling like I'm not worthy of this. And because of that, I made a couple of mistakes because of that feeling. I wasn't really conscious of it as conscious as I am now of it then, but I could see that what it was when it happened and the consequences of that. And I ended up losing everything, right? Everything. And in 2010, several years after that, after being really successful in South Africa and becoming what most people would call me Tony Robbins in South Africa, which I didn't really enjoy, but a part of me enjoyed it, but I didn't really enjoy it. Obviously, I am one of Tony's trainers. And that's something I like to do part-time. He's an amazing guy. I've learned so much from him. Really, Tony's had a massive impact on me as a young man. Mm-hmm. However, I've had lots of teachers, and now I'm a teacher myself. But I do see a lot of imposter syndrome, and I had it myself. Now, looking back, I can understand what it was. And, this question that you ask is so powerful because a lot of business people have it. it's because of this lack of self-worth. It comes down to that, it's feeling like we're not worthy of success, feeling like we are not, we have this tremendous desire for success, and we are taught to have a desire. We say, you must have desire, you must have belief, you must have drive, you got to hustle, work your ass off, become an entrepreneur.
5 a.m. club.
Exactly. 5 a.m. club, 4 a.m. club, 3 a.m. club, 24-hour club. And people say, they say when you go from working 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, and you go to entrepreneur to working 18 hours every fucking day, excuse my French, but it's like that. And I did that, right? 16, 17, 18-hour days, right? And you say you got to do it, right? Because you want the goal. But then eventually what happens is when you get there, and a lot of people get there and they think, oh my God, am I worthy? Can I keep up? Can I keep up? Can I uphold this? Can I uphold this persona, this image? Because there's this thing inside of us, that we have, Stephen Covey spoke about it, I used to love Stephen Covey. What a great teacher he was. And he came to South Africa several times. And, that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, such a powerful book. One of the most, it's still ranked on the top 100 best books of all time, business books. And for a long time, it was at number 15. I don't know what it is now, but definitely one of the most powerful books ever written. And he used to say all the time, didn't he, to business people? He said, what are you doing every day to fill your own emotional bank account? If you're not filling your own emotional bank account every day, then you're going to run out of energy, and you're going to get to your goal, and you're going to think something's missing.
Yeah.
And you're going to fall into the trap of, okay, let's set another goal. And then you get there again. It's okay. What's next? And I'm surrounded with people like that. I know so many people like that, successful people. They're successful, but on a Sunday afternoon, they can't relax. They twitching. They're twitching. They think, okay, and their belief system is, okay, cool. I just need to get into the office tomorrow morning. But I won't wait till tomorrow morning. Let me get in the office tonight. But
it's interesting we're talking about this because it kind of reminds me a bit like me in a way, but it's not, in a sense, I'm really self-aware about what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So, as you know, I used to be a former elite athlete. And so, my mindset has been conditioned in that way.
Yeah.
Athletes, if they're not top performing, or if they're not, we had some, we've had some great shows on the podcast, and we were talking about it with, Neil Fashy and Jonathan Horton, who are double world champions and world record holders and stuff like that. And we, us athletes, and there are people in, you guys that are listening right now, stop being so goddamn hard on yourself, right? We have a great Facebook group, by the way, Allan, and every Friday, one of the things that I put up every Friday is, guys, what are your wins? What are you celebrating to say, let's celebrate together? I think it's so important. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. You got to celebrate the small wins. I tell people all the time, celebrate the small wins, the smallest wins. It's something simple, like waking up in the morning. Hallelujah. You know what I mean? I'm awake. I'm alive. I woke up. I'm alive. You know what I mean? Being alive is just in the morning. You know what? I tell people, listen, if you woke up this morning, that's a celebration on its own, because so many people don't wake up every morning. Every morning, so many people don't wake up.
Yeah.
And you talk about, I love the fact that you brought those people up, though. You brought those names up, because I've worked with a lot of top people too. And Adam, I work with some of the Springboks, and a few of them are still very good friends of mine. And it doesn't matter how successful somebody is; they've still got the same challenges, And we forget that, especially people who look up to people and say, "Wow, that person, they must have everything going on. They must have it all, right? They must have it down." But without realizing that they also have the same challenges that we all have with our psychology and with our emotions and with our, and how we, just being in relationships with ourselves and other people. I was going to give you an example of someone. I was talking about a friend of mine recently, one of my Springbok friends of mine. And, he got to a point in his career where he had retired, and he had got into a few businesses and invested some of his money that he had saved up over the years of playing rugby, and made a lot of money, and invested in a few businesses, and they went down south and tanked, and so he invested in a couple of others. They tanked too, and he got to a point where suddenly he was like, he lost his confidence, and he started having a nervous, he felt like he was having a nervous breakdown, And he went through a period where he was really, really down in the dumps. And he called me one day, this is a couple of years ago. And he said, listen, man, I'm panicking. I'm having these panic attacks. I'm waking up in the middle of the night in sweats. And he said, I've just lost my confidence. I've invested so much money and I've lost money in so many different places. And I'm not sure what the hell to do with myself. I'm not sure about the future. And he said, this is very alien to me because this is a guy who's had confidence his whole life, right? This is a guy who's played, against the All Blacks, against the Australians, against England, in some of the biggest stadiums, in some of the biggest amphitheaters of sport in the world, and won, and won consistently. And I said to him, man, just relax. Let's just put it into perspective. I said, you are somebody who's got so much depth and wisdom and experience. I said, you need to start tapping into your internal wisdom, your internal experience. I said, you've gone from rugby to business with very little training. I said, you got expert training as a rugby player, and you can transition that training into business, but that's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time. You're trying to accelerate your success in business very short period of time, where you forget that you actually had 20 years of training in rugby, 25 years of training in rugby to get to the top. You haven't had 25 years of training in business. You've had a year or 2 or 3 or 4, and you've invested money in areas where maybe you didn't do your due diligence. So he said, yeah, that's true. So I said, well, let's think about what you can do going forward. I said, why don't you think about telling people your story? And he said, well, what do you mean? So I said, well, you're a Springbok, right? You're always going to be a Springbok. It's like you, right, Adam? You're a champion. You're always going to be a champion. You mentioned those names before. Those people are always going to be double world record holders. They're always going to have those medals. It doesn't matter what they do with the rest of their life. People are interested in that. They want to know how you got there and what were the challenges. And so I said the same thing to him. I said that people want to know about your challenges as a Springbok and what it took to get there. And then what are you going to do now going forward using that experience? And so he's now become a speaker. And we just spoke the other day, and he told me about a client that he just took on, and they just asked him to come in every single month. AstraZeneca, one of the biggest, pharmaceutical companies in the world, and in South Africa, they've just hired him for ongoing 12 sessions. And he was talking about what can I do? And I've got one talk. So I said, well, that's cool. Let's pledge it out, right? You can, there's so many different things you can talk about, 12 different things from one talk. But that's what can happen, right? And I think that's a good thing for the listeners, is to remember, it doesn't matter how high you get in life. Everybody's got the same challenges. Everybody has the same challenges. And also, just reminds me of what I wanted to say when you mentioned imposter syndrome. I read Michael J. Fox's book, Adam, a number of years ago. What a great book. And what a great guy. I mean, I've got goosebumps now. I mean, I remember Family Ties. Do you remember that show by any chance? Family Ties.
I don't think I did. Was that?
No, I think you're a bit younger than me, right?
Just a little bit.
So, but as a kid, I remember the show Family Ties, right, with Michael J. Fox, and it was hilarious. It was about a family and the relationships, ongoing relationships in their life, and it was aired, regularly. And it was obviously an American show that was franchised all around the world, and we had it in South Africa, and it was very popular. And Michael J. Fox went from making audition calls from a ticky box with the quarters, standing on a sidewalk in America with a bunch of quarters, phoning, studios, can I come for audition? Can I come for audition? And eventually he was invited into Family Ties to do an audition, and he became an overnight success. Wow. Overnight success. Fantastic. And he talks about it in the book, from standing in a ticky box with quarters and watching the quarter pile go down, and getting no after no after no, and then coming back the next day and doing it the next day, to going to overnight living in a mansion with a Ferrari outside, and with, all this adoration, all this love from all these strangers, wherever he went, he was mobbed. In every home in America and probably around the world, every young teenage girl's fantasy was Michael J. Fox was on the wall, in a poster. And then he talks about how this is what really blew me away. He talks about how throughout that whole process, and the more successful he got, the more he got this inexplicable fear, and he kept saying to himself, his phrase was, I wonder when the other shoe is going to drop, and we know that phrase, right? I wonder when the other shoe will drop. It's kind of like things are going great, but I wonder when the other shoe will drop. It's like, when will the reality kick in and everything will disappear? And when will the reality kick in and all this success, all this wonderful stuff will just disappear? Because really, do I deserve it? And I just thought that was fascinating. And then he talks about how when the other shoe dropped for him was when he was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's, and how that began to affect his career. And he's still a brilliant actor, actually. He was. I saw him recently in. I was watching a show for a while, a series. I think it is. He was a lawyer, and obviously his the Parkinson's was obvious. You can see it, but he's so good at the way he uses it, and he's still such a brilliant actor. But isn't that interesting? I just that really affected me. I mean, and I remember Christopher Reeves, right? You remember the original Superman?
Yeah, Christopher Reeves, absolutely.
The original Superman, and the same for him, became hugely successful, hugely popular. Everybody loved him. He was such a lovable man, such a last man. Robin Williams was his best friend. Mm-hmm. There's another prime example. People who arrive at the top of their career, but still something.
It's like a disconnection, isn't it? A complete disconnection where people are just not aware of what that disconnection is and how they can effectively overcome it, I guess, in a way, right? Yeah. But listen, I mean, this is we're having so much fun on here. I mean, we could go on for hours. I hope you guys are getting some great content from me and Allan and the show today. Al, I know that I was going to say, I just wanted to ask you one last question, actually. What are you working on right now? I'd love to know, because you've been doing what you've been doing for like best part of 25 years or thereabouts. So I'd love to know what you're working on right now and how some of the listeners can connect with you.
Oh, thanks, Adam. I appreciate that question. I've got a program called Awaken. And so for the last few years, I've been doing Awaken in different countries like Ukraine and Russia and Romania, as well as London, obviously, where I live for the most part of my life. And however, during this lockdown period, I thought, well, what can I do now? I'm not going to be able to travel because I'm always on a plane, like you, I travel a lot internationally. I've got, I do work all around the world. And I thought, what can I do? I thought, well, I can still reach people through social media. Mm-hmm. And I've got a page and a YouTube channel, and I've got my Instagram, etc. And Facebook I use a lot. And I thought, well, what I can do is, why don't I do my program online? So I thought, okay, the first thing I did is I thought I'll do a communication program. I did that for 2 days, 2 whole days on communication. And that was awesome. And then I did my Awaken program online for the first time, 2 days. And so I've done it a few times now. I'm doing it this weekend, actually, funny enough, for the third time or the fourth time. So what I'm currently working on now is I have a program called Awaken. And what it is it allows people to really understand what's driving them deep down, and also how can they align themselves with their own true north. I like to use that phrase a lot. I say to people, like, have you found your own true north? Because we all have our own true north, and we'll never truly be happy until we truly find our own true north. And that means we can align with our own true purpose. I get a lot of people in my workshops. I don't know if you probably get the same thing in your talks, where you ask people, how many of you have found your purpose? And very few people have found their purpose. I say, well, how many of you are still looking for your purpose? You're not sure what it is yet. And everyone's hand goes up. Yeah. And so my program, Awaken, is really just about helping people to find their true purpose, to align themselves with their true north. Mm-hmm. In other words, to understand, for 21 years now, I've been studying spiritual psychology. And so I use spiritual psychology in business. I use it with Springbok rugby players. I use it everywhere I go. And really, it's about helping people to understand, the connection between mind, body, and spirit. And you got to have that connection. It's got to be healthy, because if you are not healthy in all 3 areas, then at some point you are going to hit the wall. Yeah. And it's going to show up it could show up as cancer. It could show up as heart disease. It could show up as a car accident. It could show up in so many different ways. And I like to talk about in business with people, and in this program, Awaken, how we think things happen accidentally or haphazardly without realizing that we are literally manifesting every experience that we have, and we manifest it for a deeper reason, and we need to understand what that is. And so that's what I'm working on currently, is bringing my Awaken program to more and more people online, until we can get it back to offline next year, hopefully, hopefully soon. I don't know if events will ever be the same. I think the online experience is here to stay, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Adam,
I love it.
I've been able to reach, about 85,000 people from about 85 countries over the last, 12 weeks, from the comfort of a beanbag and a screen, and a phone. and using Zoom, which is awesome. And I think I'll continue to do the online experience. I enjoy it, but I love being in a group of people. I love being in a room with people. I love the connection.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm working on currently. Thank you, my man.
Yeah, you're welcome. So what I was going to say, guys, I hope that you have got some awesome content and some breakthroughs from today. I hope that your notebooks have now been filled up with awesome notes and you've got some breakthroughs. So Allan, just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate you having me, man. It's been great to connect with you. Thank you, my man.
It's all good.
I've been looking for a while. JP told me so many great things about you. So looking at your website, I thought, wow, it's going to be a great conversation.
100%. And it has been. I have to admit, it has been. So, guys, listen, I was going to say, please do check out Allan's social media handles below and feel free to connect with him. Just make sure that you say that you've listened to us on the Game Changers experience so he knows where you've come from. But listen, from me and Allan, I hope you have a fantastic day, week, month, whenever you're listening to this. Whenever you're listening to this, have a fantastic day. See you soon. Take care. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Hey, you guys, I just want to say thank you so much for listening in to this episode of the Game Changers experience. I hope that you got some amazing value, some great insights and golden nuggets that you can implement into your business straight away. I would really, really appreciate it if you could leave a 5-star review on the button below. Have a fantastic day and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.